Okay, in this video I want to review some points about the special senses, and we're starting out here looking at some mechanisms on the molecular level in which odorants or molecules in the air that you're able to perceive. These odorants are in your nasal cavity, and on the epithelium of the lining of your nasal cavity you have these odorants binding to receptors. The type of receptor this often is called a G protein coupled receptor, and what you see result from that is an increase in the level of cyclic AMP within the cell. This then is able to bind to a different protein, which is a sodium channel you see here, and allow sodium ions to come into the cell. And this is leading to depolarization of the cell, just like we talked about in more detail in Chapter 12. This is going to excite the cell and eventually lead to an action potential. When we look at gustation, instead of following that solitary mechanism, there are two different categories depending on what the actual chemical species is stimulating the receptor. You notice we've got a category of salty and sour receptors, and that's a bit more simple than this category of sweet, bitter, and umami. The salty and sour chemical species, sour would be something like a hydrogen ion. Salty is often due to excess of sodium ions being present. These will directly bind to receptors and then cause opening of the sodium channels that allow depolarization to occur. In the other category, things like carbohydrates, alkaloids that are bitter, glutamate from things like MSG will stimulate the taste of umami, and they do this by turning on the G protein coupled receptors again. Here you see the G proteins becoming activated, and eventually this leads to, you can see the red color again, indicating this membrane is depolarized and you have an action potential. In vision, the neurons you see located here, you have a series of three important neurons. These are all located in the retina, which is the neural layer of the eye. In this top cell, this is the one that is actually able to absorb light, and it has a specialized area where it contains the protein rhodopsin. Light striking this area will allow depolarization of the cell, so you'll have an action potential move from this photoreceptor down to the bipolar cell, and then the bipolar cell will fire another action potential that goes to the ganglion cell. So this progression is important from photoreceptor to bipolar cell to ganglion. Then this ganglion cell has very long axons, and these axons will eventually form the optic nerve. There's exits the posterior cavity of the eye. And lastly, in hearing, the sound waves are first transmitted into mechanical motion in the middle ear. So everything in the external acoustic meatus is external ear. Then the tympanic membrane and all three bones here, the ossicles, are all part of the middle ear. And then the inner ear includes the cochlea, and you have a simplified cartoon of the cochlea there. This progression of the sound waves going through first the scala vestibuli, through the cochlear duct, and to the scala tympani, that progression is important. And you don't see any neurons here. This is just physical vibration with the auditory ossicles. There's a wave created in the fluid, which is paralymph in the scala vestibuli. When this motion is translated into the endolymph, which fills the cochlear duct, you see vibration, you see the small bend down here of the basilar membrane. So if we zoom into just that area, and you see the basilar membrane now down here at the base of this structure, the neurons finally are these hair cells. So you have all kinds of different receptors. When we talk about receptors in this chapter, we're mainly talking about the cells that are able to receive a special sensory signal. So the hair cells are your auditory receptors. They're able to perceive sound waves. So what happens is that basilar membrane is bouncing up and down, is that these hair cells have cilia that bend against the tectorial membrane. So you have a very stiff connective tissue structure. These are bendable cilia at the apical end of these hair cells. And when they bend, pushing against that membrane, they're going to start an action potential, and then the axons that send that signal are going to form down here into the vestibulocochlear nerve.